When my mother-in-law leaned over and whispered something into my husband Merrick's ear, I noticed his face change. He looked angry, his jaw tightened, and before I could even process what was happening, he suddenly grabbed my hair and punched me hard in the face. I fell, dazed and terrified, unable to believe what had just happened. Desperate, I called the police, hoping someone would help me. But when they arrived, my heart sank. The officer knew Merrick. Instead of helping, he brushed off my pleas, saying I had no proof. In that moment, I felt completely alone and unsafe. I realized I needed a new plan if I wanted to protect myself, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. Looking back, I remember the first day I brought my daughter, Cassandra, home from the hospital. The joy was incredible, but the exhaustion was just as real. My name is Evelyn, I'm 32 years old, and adjusting to motherhood felt like a whirlwind. Those first weeks were filled with sleepless nights, endless feedings, and trying to keep up with the chaos that seemed to fill every corner of our home in Austin, Texas. The house was always messy, laundry stacked up, and the kitchen constantly cluttered. My husband Merrick was working long hours, and I often felt like I was just barely managing to hold it all together. One particularly difficult afternoon, I was struggling to soothe Cassandra, who wouldn't stop crying, when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I looked around our messy home and felt a wave of shame. I hadn't had a chance to clean, and the sight of the cluttered kitchen only added to my stress. I opened the door, and there stood Ember, Merrick's mother. Ember had a way of commanding attention, and the moment she stepped inside, her sharp gaze took in the state of our home. "Well, look at this," Ember said as she walked in, her eyes taking in the messy room. "I see things haven't improved since the last time I was here." I forced a smile, but it felt strained.
Hi, Ember.
"I'm just a bit overwhelmed with everything right now." Her gaze swept over the living room, noting the scattered toys and the pile of dishes in the kitchen. "Overwhelmed? It looks more like you've given up. Is this really how you plan to raise my granddaughters?" Her words hit hard, but I tried to keep my cool. "I'm doing my best," I said. "It's just been a lot to handle lately." Ember's disapproval was clear. She walked into the kitchen, eyeing the clutter. "This place is a mess. How do you expect to manage anything if you can't even keep your house in order?" My cheeks burned with embarrassment. Merrick was rarely home because of his long work hours, so most of the responsibilities fell on me. I was doing all I could, but it was obvious that my efforts were not enough for Ember. Just then, the front door opened and Merrick walked in. His face lit up when he saw his mother.
Mom.
"I didn't know you were stopping by." Ember took the chance to complain right away. "Merrick, look at this. Your wife can't even keep the house in order. It's like she's completely lost control." Merrick looked around, his face falling as he took in the mess. "Evelyn, we need to talk about this. I know it's hard, but you need to prioritize better." A knot formed in my stomach. "Merrick, I'm trying my best. It's not as simple as it looks." Ember jumped in, her voice cold. "Being a mother isn't just about taking care of a baby. It's about managing the home and showing responsibility." Merrick's face shifted, looking between his mother and me, unsure of what to do. Finally, he said, "Maybe Mom's right, Evelyn. Maybe we need to talk about what's at stake here." Ember's voice grew sharper. "She doesn't need to talk. She needs to learn discipline. This isn't how we live in our family." The tension in the room was heavy. Merrick, who would usually stand by me, was now looking at me with a mix of frustration and disappointment. "Evelyn, this just isn't okay." Before I could respond, Ember leaned close to Merrick, whispering something in his ear. I saw his face harden as he looked back at me with a cold, unreadable expression. "Maybe you're right," Merrick finally said, his voice full of hesitation. "Maybe you do need to learn the hard way." My heart sank as I saw his expression darken. Without warning, Merrick lunged toward me, grabbing my hair and pulling it hard. Before I could process what was happening, he struck me with a forceful punch to my face. The impact was so strong it left me reeling, stumbling backward in shock and pain. I clutched my cheek, feeling the sting, but what hurt even more was the deep sense of betrayal. Tears filled my eyes, blurring my vision, as I tried to make sense of what he'd just done. Cassandra, my little girl, had been quiet up until then, but she began to cry, her tiny voice adding to my heartbreak and distress. Feeling completely desperate, I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. I was sure the police would help, that they would bring some relief to this nightmare. But when the officer arrived, I felt my heart sink again. I could see he recognized Merrick. They were old friends. His calm, dismissive expression as he listened to my story made my stomach turn. "I'm afraid I can't do much without clear evidence," the officer said, casting a quick glance at Merrick. "There's just not enough here to act on." I was stunned, feeling abandoned by the very person who should have helped me. "But he hit me," I pleaded. "Can't you do anything?" The officer shook his head, his face unchanging. "Without solid proof, my hands are tied. Maybe next time, try to gather more evidence before calling us." With that, he left, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. I turned to Merrick, who stood there with a cold, emotionless expression. Beside him was Ember, his mother, looking smug and satisfied, as if pleased with what had just happened. The betrayal cut deeply, coming from not only Merrick but also the officer. As the door closed, I cradled Cassandra in my arms, sinking to the floor, feeling utterly alone. The home I had once loved now felt more like a prison, each wall closing in on me. The physical pain from the punch was nothing compared to the storm of emotions inside. I realized right then that my life had turned into something I could no longer bear. In that moment, a resolve began to form within me. I knew I couldn't stay here any longer, not for myself, and especially not for Cassandra. Merrick's actions, fueled by Ember's influence, had crossed a line. I needed to escape and build a safe, happy life for me and my daughter. This was the start of a journey that would test my strength in ways I had never imagined. The days that followed the attack were some of the hardest I'd ever endured. My face hurt, and the emotional wounds ran even deeper, but underneath the pain, I felt something stronger growing: determination. I had to get out of this toxic environment. I had to protect Cassandra. But escaping wasn't going to be easy. Then, a few days later, I finally saw a glimmer of hope. Isla, my close friend from college, had always been someone I could trust. We hadn't spoken in a while, but I knew she was the one person who might understand and could possibly help me. I hesitated at first, not wanting to burden her with my troubles, but my desperation pushed me to call her. "Isla, it's Evelyn," I said, my voice shaky as I spoke into the phone. "I need your help. Things have gotten really bad. Merrick, he hit me, and the police didn't help. I can't stay here anymore. I'm scared." Isla's voice filled with concern immediately. "Oh, Evelyn, I'm so sorry to hear this. You don't deserve any of this. Listen, I'm an investigator now. I can help. Let's meet and talk about what you need to do." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop. When I walked in, I saw her already sitting there, looking calm and collected, just as I remembered her. I sat down across from her, feeling both anxious and relieved. Here was someone who cared, who understood, and who might be able to help me get out of this terrible situation. "So, what's the plan?" Isla asked, her gaze steady and reassuring. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "I need to leave Merrick, but I don't have proof of the abuse. I need evidence to show what's really happening, that his behavior is dangerous, and that Ember's influence over him is only making things worse." Isla listened carefully, nodding as I explained everything. She seemed determined and confident, and her support gave me a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could make it through this and build a new life for myself and Cassandra. "We'll need to document everything," Isla said firmly. "Do you have any recordings, messages, or proof of the abuse?" I shook my head. "I don't, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Isla's expression softened with sympathy. "Then let's start by gathering as much evidence as possible. Document your interactions with Merrick and Ember. Try to record any instances of abuse or manipulation." Over the next few weeks, Isla and I worked tirelessly. She showed me how to use a hidden recording app on my phone, allowing me to secretly capture conversations and incidents. I recorded phone calls, saved text messages, and even kept a diary of my daily interactions with Merrick and Ember. It was challenging to do this without raising their suspicion, especially since they were watching me closely. One day, Ember called while Merrick was at work. I answered the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello, Ember." "Evelyn," she replied, her voice dripping with condescension. "Merrick told me you've been causing trouble. I've been very patient, but it's clear you need to be reminded of your place." I recorded every word, capturing her manipulative tone and the way she belittled me as a mother and wife. Hearing her talk about me and Merrick in such a controlling way was disturbing, but I knew it was critical evidence. Isla, and I also started planning for the day I would finally leave. We mapped out a strategy so I could leave while Merrick was at work, ensuring he wouldn't be there to stop me. Isla helped me arrange a temporary, safe place for Cassandra and me, so we'd have somewhere secure to go once we left. One night, as I lay in bed, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. Leaving wasn't just about escaping Merrick's physical abuse. It was about freeing myself from Ember's suffocating control. I knew the journey ahead would be risky and difficult, but I had to do it, for Cassandra's sake and my own. The day of our planned escape finally arrived. I felt a knot of fear and excitement in my stomach. Merrick had left for work, and Isla had agreed to meet me at the house to help with the move. I spent the morning packing essentials, trying to keep calm and focused. Just as I was finishing, my phone buzzed with a message from Isla. "I'm outside. Are you ready?" My heart raced. I quickly gathered Cassandra and our bags, taking one last look around the house. The clutter, the mess, all of it symbolized the chaos and control that had filled my life here. With a deep breath, I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and walked toward Isla's car. We loaded everything into her trunk, and as we drove away, a quiet sense of relief settled over me. For the first time in ages, I felt a glimmer of hope, even though I knew the road ahead was uncertain. When we arrived at Isla's house, exhaustion washed over me. We unloaded the bags, and Isla offered comforting words, reminding me that this was just the first step. In the following days, we focused on gathering more evidence and preparing for what lay ahead. Exposing Merrick and Ember's abuse would be key to building a strong case, and I was determined to see it through, no matter how challenging. Isla's support was invaluable. Her background as an investigator was a lifeline during this difficult time. Together, we worked on creating a solid case, knowing that clear, detailed evidence was essential. Every incident, every abusive word from Merrick, every controlling action from Ember, I documented it all. Isla also suggested I reach out to family members or friends who might have seen Ember's controlling behavior or Merrick's aggression. To my relief, one of Merrick's cousins, who had always been sympathetic, agreed to speak up. Knowing I had someone else on my side gave me even more strength to keep moving forward. This was just the beginning, but with Isla's help and the support of those willing to stand with me, I felt stronger and more determined than ever. I was ready to fight for a safer, happier life for Cassandra and me. Merrick's cousin provided a written statement, sharing her observations of Merrick's aggressive behavior and Ember's constant interference in our marriage. With this final piece of evidence, Isla and I started organizing everything we had gathered. We knew that simply having proof wasn't enough. We needed to present it in a way that was clear, convincing, and thorough. We sorted the materials into key categories: incidents of abuse, instances of manipulation by Ember, and Merrick's unpredictable, erratic behavior. Isla helped me create a detailed report where we summarized each piece of evidence, explaining its importance. We added timestamps and gave context for every recording, making sure everything was as precise and clear as possible. The work was overwhelming, but we both knew it was essential to build a solid case. One day, Isla and I met with a lawyer who specialized in domestic abuse cases. She carefully reviewed our evidence, listening to recordings and reading through documents. After going through everything, she looked at us and said, "You have a strong case, but we'll need to make sure it's presented clearly. I'll help you file a restraining order and press charges." Her words filled me with hope. Having legal support made me feel more secure, knowing there was someone to help us navigate this complex process. Together, we prepared all the necessary paperwork, making sure our evidence was organized and complete. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. My nerves were frayed, but Isla stayed by my side, offering steady support. As we walked into the courthouse, I felt the weight of all our efforts and the hope for justice pressing down on me. The atmosphere was tense, and I could feel my heart pounding as we waited for our turn. When it was time to present our case, a mix of fear and adrenaline surged through me. Isla's expertise helped guide us through each step as we shared our evidence. We played recordings, presented documents, and included statements from Merrick's cousin and other witnesses who had seen Ember's controlling behavior. The courtroom was silent as each piece of evidence was revealed. I noticed the judge's expressions change as he listened and reviewed the material. It was clear that he understood the gravity of our situation. Presenting everything was nerve-wracking, but I knew this moment represented all the hard work Isla and I had done. As the hearing wrapped up, we waited anxiously for the judge's decision. It was a tense period, filled with hope and worry. Days later, we finally received the news we'd been waiting for. The judge had ruled in our favor. Merrick and Ember would face legal consequences for their actions. This was a huge victory, but I knew our journey wasn't over. Isla and I continued to work on securing a new apartment for me and Cassandra, finalizing all the details so we could start fresh. Winning in court was just the beginning of our path to a safe, independent life. With Isla's support and the justice system behind us, I felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. Looking back on everything, I realized how much this fight for justice had changed me. It had tested my strength, resilience, and determination. Each step forward gave me more confidence, making me believe that I could overcome challenges that once seemed impossible. With the court's decision on our side, Isla and I felt a mix of relief and caution. Our evidence had made an impact, but the final step, ensuring Merrick and Ember faced real consequences, was still ahead. Isla, our lawyer, and I worked closely with the police to make sure justice would be served. We compiled a complete dossier with all our evidence, recordings, text messages, witness statements, and every detail that would help authorities understand the full extent of what I had endured. Turning over our hard work to the police was a powerful moment. I felt like we were finally closing a painful chapter of my life, setting the stage for a safer, happier future for me and Cassandra. With Isla's expertise and my first-hand accounts, our case was as strong as it could be. When the day of the arrest finally arrived, my heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. Merrick and Ember still had no idea what was coming, and I couldn't help but feel nervous about how they'd react. Isla was by my side, keeping me calm and focused as we waited. She advised me to stay a safe distance from their house to avoid any direct confrontation. In the afternoon, we watched from a distance as the police arrived at Merrick and Ember's home. My emotions were a tangled mess of anxiety, relief, and anticipation. The officers moved slowly, taking their time as they approached the house. The wait felt endless. Every minute stretched as I held my breath. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Isla's phone buzzed. One of the officers called to confirm that Merrick and Ember had been arrested. Hearing the news, I felt an overwhelming weight lift from my shoulders. This long, painful journey had finally reached its peak, and the people who had tormented me were now facing real consequences for their actions. That evening, as the sun set over Austin, I felt a deep sense of closure. It wasn't just about winning in court, it was about reclaiming my life and standing up for my right to safety and respect. With Merrick and Ember facing charges, I could finally imagine a future without the constant threat of their abuse. In the following days, I focused on settling into my new apartment with my daughter. Moving was exhausting, both physically and emotionally, but it also symbolized a fresh start. I took my time setting up our new home, making it a peaceful, comforting place for us to heal and start over. I wanted it to be a space filled with love and safety. Isla continued to be a steady friend and guide, helping me navigate the challenges of my new life. She made sure I had access to the resources and support I needed. Her presence was a reminder of the strength and support that had carried me through this difficult time. Even as the legal process continued, I stayed informed about the court proceedings and was prepared to testify if needed. I wanted to see this through, to ensure that Merrick and Ember were held accountable for the pain they had caused. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I felt grateful for the incredible support I had received from Isla and the legal system. Their help was essential in breaking free from the cycle of abuse and finding my way to a new life. This journey taught me the importance of resilience, courage, and the power of reaching out for help when facing adversity. When the day arrived that Merrick and Ember were officially charged, I felt a bittersweet sense of justice. Knowing they'd face consequences brought a feeling of relief, but I was also aware that the impact of their actions would stay with me. However, holding them accountable was crucial. It ensured that they couldn't harm me or anyone else again. As I settled into my new life, I often thought about the strength it had taken to confront such a painful situation. The support of friends, the legal victories, and my determination had all been essential in helping me rebuild my life. Now, I was focused on creating a positive and loving environment for my daughter, a place where we could be safe from the shadows of abuse and manipulation. In the end, my journey became a testament to resilience and the power of standing up against abuse. Each day, I felt stronger and more capable of facing the future with hope and confidence. I knew I was building a life where both my daughter and I could thrive, free from fear and surrounded by love. With Isla's expertise and my first-hand accounts, our case was as strong as it could be. When the day of the arrest finally arrived, my heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. Merrick and Ember still had no idea what was coming, and I couldn't help but feel nervous about how they'd react. Isla was by my side, keeping me calm and focused as we waited. She advised me to stay a safe distance from their house to avoid any direct confrontation. In the afternoon, we watched from a distance as the police arrived at Merrick and Ember's home. My emotions were a tangled mess of anxiety, relief, and anticipation. The officers moved slowly, taking their time as they approached the house. The wait felt endless. Every minute stretched as I held my breath. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Isla's phone buzzed. One of the officers called to confirm that Merrick and Ember had been arrested. Hearing the news, I felt an overwhelming weight lift from my shoulders. This long, painful journey had finally reached its peak, and the people who had tormented me were now facing real consequences for their actions. That evening, as the sun set over Austin, I felt a deep sense of closure. It wasn't just about winning in court. It was about reclaiming my life and standing up for my right to safety and respect. With Merrick and Ember facing charges, I could finally imagine a future without the constant threat of their abuse. In the following days, I focused on settling into my new apartment with my daughter. Moving was exhausting, both physically and emotionally, but it also symbolized a fresh start. I took my time setting up our new home, making it a peaceful, comforting place for us to heal and start over. I wanted it to be a space filled with love and safety. Isla continued to be a steady friend and guide, helping me navigate the challenges of my new life. She made sure I had access to the resources and support I needed. Her presence was a reminder of the strength and support that had carried me through this difficult time. Even as the legal process continued, I stayed informed about the court proceedings and was prepared to testify if needed. I wanted to see this through, to ensure that Merrick and Ember were held accountable for the pain they had caused. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I felt grateful for the incredible support I had received from Isla and the legal system. Their help was essential in breaking free from the cycle of abuse and finding my way to a new life. This journey taught me the importance of resilience, courage, and the power of reaching out for help when facing adversity. When the day arrived that Merrick and Ember were officially charged, I felt a bittersweet sense of justice. Knowing they'd face consequences brought a feeling of relief, but I was also aware that the impact of their actions would stay with me. However, holding them accountable was crucial. It ensured that they couldn't harm me or anyone else again. As I settled into my new life, I often thought about the strength it had taken to confront such a painful situation. The support of friends, the legal victories, and my determination had all been essential in helping me rebuild my life. Now, I was focused on creating a positive and loving environment for my daughter, a place where we could be safe from the shadows of abuse and manipulation. In the end, my journey became a testament to resilience and the power of standing up against abuse. Each day, I felt stronger and more capable of facing the future with hope and confidence. I knew I was building a life where both my daughter and I could thrive, free from fear and surrounded by love.